Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
It is Friday, a Black Friday. Just before we get to Thomas Drance from The Athletic, Delaney's OK Tire in Langley inbox. Delaney's OK Tire, also a sponsor of our Old Man Cane, which hasn't come out much lately.
Out in a while.
Right? You can use it too, right?
I need to tell you Dawson Creek stories from 1977.
Don't worry, we'll get into those. The way this show's going, we might need them. From Bill, Delaney's OK Tire in Langley inbox. The curse of the wheel in 1970 continues for the Canucks. We won't be getting Bedard unless JR or Patrick pulls off a magical trade. People remember 1970, the Carnival wheel. Everybody thought the Canucks were going to get Gilbert Perreault. Punch Imlach said, no, it's actually us. We won the lottery back then. I guess you'd call it a lottery. And the Sabres got Gilbert Perreault. The Canucks got Dale Talon, who was fine, but he wasn't Gilbert Perreault. Thomas, sorry.
Go ahead.
Thomas Drance joins us from the Athletic. Canucks in Vegas Saturday to take on the Golden Knights again. How are you, sir?
You're revisiting one of my favorite stories. And I believe, actually, Tom Watt, not the former coach and Leaf scout, but the former Province newspaper writer, termed it Black Tuesday. So it's appropriate that you're remembering the Dale Talon, Gilbert Perreault wheel on today of all days. And Donnie, I just want to remind everybody, hoping for good fortune for the Canucks, of exactly how things unfolded that day. First, there was a coin flip to determine who would get to choose high numbers or low numbers on the very first spin of the wheel, which was to determine waiver priority. And so the Buffalo Sabres won the coin flip. Then they won the waiver priority spin. Then they won first pick in the expansion spin.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And then they won the third spin of the wheel. So it wasn't just that the Canucks lost one 50-50 draw that day, but four in a row to start this franchise's history. What's more Canucks than that?
I guess so, except things haven't gone much better for the Sabres, arguably worse. So there is that. And there was confusion because there were Roman numerals involved, and some of the guys weren't familiar with the Roman numerals. I'm not sure.
It was a terribly designed wheel. And if you go back and watch the video, the number one, like the 11 was the only number displayed like this, a 1 and then a 1 beneath it, as opposed to being the way you'd expect it. And right before the crucial spin of the wheel, Clarence Campbell, the NHL's commissioner at the time, feeling perhaps a little vain with television cameras in the smoke-filled room, decided to remove his glasses. Right before the
dramatic
final spin.
Yeah.
So it was both a commissioner removing his glasses and the terrible graphic design of the wheel, right? Like Ryan Henderson's brother, Matt, would do a far better job. The 1 and the 1. That was what screwed up Clarence Campbell and caused people to momentarily think Gilbert Perreault was Vancouver bound. Of course he was not.
I love this because you're sounding like an old man, and I like to have company on the show. No, well, he's a young man.
At the time, I was minus 17, boys. Minus 17. But I've gone back and done the work because it was so fascinating to me. And because over the years, the story of that day has sort of like metastasized and become was there a glitch in the wheel? Was there a thing? So when I wrote my book, I decided I'd go back, watch the video, dig in the archives, found it at the Hockey Hall of Fame stacks, and watched it and sort of figured it all out. A whole chapter in my book, which people should buy on Black Friday at the Amazon sale. 100 things Canucks fans should know and do before they die. Might as well get that plug in.
There you go. We'll try to find the cover if it's online. Hey, you and Harm have graded Canuck players in the Athletic, a report card, if you will, after 20 games. Who came out on top? Who got A's, A pluses?
Pettersson, Elias Pettersson, and Andrei Kuzmenko, and that's the end of the list. And, I've been really impressed with Andrei Kuzmenko. I was sort of fading the idea that he'd be this type of impact player right off the bat. I thought it would take him more time, particularly after we saw Vasily Podkolzin take half the season last year to really figure out defending at the NHL level. But I've really liked Kuzmenko's ability to contribute on that line. I don't think he's just a passenger, gentlemen. I think he sees the ice in a really unique way. I think he's been far more dynamic as a puck carrier and through the neutral zone than I would have had any reasonable expectation of, having watched video of him over the course of the summer or talked to industry scouts and other talent evaluators about his foot speed. So those two guys are sort of carrying the mustard for this team 5-on-5. And, basically almost it's really hard to find, I think, other bright spots in terms of how this team is performing at even strength, right? There's lots of gaudy numbers being put up, but in terms of the guys who are winning their matchup on a nightly basis, spending a lot of time territorially in the right side of the rink in the attacking zone, Luke Schenn, I think we gave a B+. Spencer Martin, we gave a B+. There's a few Bs there, Ilya Mikheyev, Quinn Hughes, but for the most part, outside of those two guys on Vancouver's top line, or what should be Vancouver's top line, let's be honest, I'm not seeing a lot to like in terms of Vancouver's 5-on-5 profile.
Okay, and Thomas, there are a lot of people who are watching you right now, listening to you right now, saying, well, what about Bo Horvat? Yeah. 16 goals, 5-on-5, shorthanded, on the power play. Who cares? He's got 16 goals. Wouldn't he warrant an A or an A+?
The underlying profile at 5-on-5 just isn't great. I mean, it's good, it's fine. It's just not great. They're not winning that matchup on a consistent basis. The percentages have been in his favor in a major way, and yet the Canucks haven't widely outscored the opposition with him on the ice. The goal scoring, you give him credit for. He's worked really hard and been really thoughtful about how his game creates offense, grafting more of it onto his game, changed his stick, has been working really hard on figuring out how to be more deceptive with his shot. I think the playmaking will come, but from the perspective of what the team is accomplishing and what he's driving, the results he's individually driving at 5-on-5, it's okay. It's okay, but it's not overwhelming. And considering the amount of goals that he's scored, considering the probability that his conversion rate's going to slow down a bit, you'd like to see a player with the percentages at their back running downhill, have a massive 5-on-5 goal differential. Bo Horvat doesn't. Bo Horvat just doesn't. And that's not all on him. But, look, we've seen it. We've seen it. Why are the Canucks where they are? Why are they 7-10-3, despite the fact that they have a guy on pace for 60 goals and two guys on pace for 40, gentlemen? Right? What's the reason for that? They're giving up too much. Yep. Every time you've got, Miller and Horvat lining up against the opposition's best players, it's the opposition's best players that are winning the game, that are having the big night, right? The McDavid hat trick to open the season, on and on down the list. At some point, if you're playing in that matchup role, and you're going to be graded with an A grade, don't you need to be winning those games? Don't you need to be the reason your team's winning those games, as opposed to the reason the score line's 5-4 instead of 5-2? That's sort of the difference for us.
Anyone get an F or a D-?
We gave some Ds out. Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Tyler Myers both got Ds. I believe that we also gave a F to Jack Rathbone. At some point, too, it's not totally fair to Jack Rathbone. It's not like he's had a ton of opportunity, but part of your job, part of what we're evaluating players on is are you earning minutes? If you're Jack Rathbone, what's job number one? Earn minutes. So same thing for a player like Podkolzin, who I've actually liked. I think he's played far better than the opportunities he's being afforded would suggest, certainly than the bottom line production would suggest. We gave him a C+ because part of what Podkolzin's expectations are coming into this season is to make it so that you can't be scratched, right? To be indispensable. There's a fair few Ds being handed out across the board. One thing I'd note is Harmon and I, who we do this exercise together, the underlying data matters a lot to us. We weight it very heavily. It's not the only thing we're looking at, but it's something we weight heavily. And so when we look at this Canucks team, one thing that I think we're both concerned about is at 5-on-5 anyway, this team has taken a step back. They're less formidable at 5-on-5 than we expected. They're generating an awful lot less at 5-on-5 than they did last season, particularly after Bruce Boudreau came aboard. And they're also surrendering a lot more in terms of chances than they were last season when Boudreau came aboard. And, one thing to note is Vancouver's played better of late, right? What is 7-4-1 the last 12? Yeah. But to some extent, extraordinary conversion luck is disguising just how significant the step back this team has taken, right? Just like an inability to get a save, particularly on the power play, has made this team look worse defensively than they probably are. Don't get me wrong, they're still below average, but they're probably not, Anaheim Ducks territory in terms of being an unserious defensive team. But offensively, they look like a juggernaut. They look like an elite offensive team. As I reeled off, they've got a guy on pace for 60. They've got two guys on pace for 40. I think that's going to dry up if they can't find a way to spend more time generating real scoring chances and zone time than they have to this point. They've been really fortunate, and I think that's buttressing some really poor process from this club at the moment.
Say that word again. But what?
Buttressing. You can look it up and tweet it at me later.
Why do you use you and I talk for hours on the phone? You never use words like that with me.
Why do you think that is?
And he uses these words on Twitter. Like, what's buttressing?
I talk buttressing to hold up, support.
If I Google buttressing right now, what am I going to come up with?
Don't do that.
What's going to pop up? What's going to pop up?
I just want to know, Rick. I just want to know, how would you spell buttressing?
B-U-T. Let's move on to the next question. Listen, we're running out of time, but I want to get your thoughts on this. 20-game mark. We all know U.S. Thanksgiving teams start to get a feel.
Sure.
We're into this. Teams are knowing they're not going to make the playoffs. They're in the middle of the pack or they're at the top. The Canucks have hit the 20-game mark, 7-10-3. You love the goals for. 7th in the league, but you don't like the goals against. Horrible. Where are they in your eyes after 20? What is management thinking about the rest of the season right now? Quickly.
Yeah, I mean, look, Vegas has them at plus 230 to make the playoffs. The only teams with worse playoff odds, according to the books, are Chicago, Arizona, and San Jose and Anaheim. So those are the only teams whose playoff odds they are better than in the Western Conference. Not good company. I think management is aware that this group needs a lot of work. I think there's some disappointment with how they've performed and a belief that they could perform better, perhaps with a more structured approach. But I also think there's an understanding of just how far this team is away from contention. And in fact, I think a dawning realization that this team may be even further than they thought. All of that said, boys, there's still a 1-in-3 shot. Plus 230, that's not a huge underdog to make the playoffs. There's a chance here. There's very much still a chance here. They're not DOA by any means, but I think everyone watching this team play, and in this market, this market's smart enough to know what winning hockey looks like, and we all know that this isn't it.
Oh, our thanks for buttressing our show, Thomas.
I got it. I Googled it. You want to hear it?
He just told it to us.
No, I want the official version. Provide a building or structure with projecting supports built against walls. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Hey, and here's another one for you. For if I ever use one of these words incorrectly, which will never happen. Malaprop. Look that up. Malaprop. There you go, buddy.
What?
Malaprop. M-A-L-A-P-R-O-P.
It's funny. You and I talk for hours. You never use these words with me.
That's because I'm mostly yelling at you, Rick. I'm mostly like, Rick, stop it. Stop it.
There is a lot of yelling when you and I talk.
Yeah. Well, because, we have a lovely dynamic where you're always suggesting that what's real at the moment can't change. And I'm always telling you that it's a mirage.
You cherry pick and fit stuff into your narrative all the time.
Narrative. Very good.
Yeah.
Hey, malaprop is not a good yelling word anyway. Neither is buttress. So I understand.
That's
Thomas.
True.
Yeah. Hey,
thanks, boys.
Thanks for this. You can check out Thomas's and Harm's article.
Good article.
In The Athletic. Thanks, Thomas. You bet.
All right, Thomas.